Hello all, in this video we shall discuss glacial lake outburst flood. Now, all of us know that when glaciers melt, the water in the glacial lakes accumulates behind those loose natural glacial dams which are made of ice, sand, pebbles and ice residue. Basically, these are natural dams, they are not man-made dams. And because of the fact that these are, natural dams and not man-made, they are very weak in structure. And the failure of these dams abruptly, which is situated on top of a glacial lake, and which holds a large amount of water, large volume of water, when these dams fail abruptly, it causes catastrophic flooding downstream. And therefore, when an outburst that happens when a dam containing a glacial lake fails, it results in the glacial lake outburst flood. We now move on to discuss the vulnerabilities of hydropower projects in the Himalayan region. Now, according to the National Disaster Management Authority, because of the consequences of climate change, the glaciers in the Himalayan regions are in the retreating phase, and as a result of that, there is a growth in the glacial lakes, and these possess a potential risk to downstream infrastructure and life. The second major vulnerability is that there is an increased demand in electricity, and the increased demand in electricity has led to construction of large number of hydropower projects upstream near the glacial lakes. And in a research paper recently published by the IOP Science, the researchers pointed out that when the hydropower projects built in the Himalayas are, very close to the glacial lakes, they possess a risk to the fragile environment in which they are situated. And the Himalayan belt has over 2,300 glacial lakes which are melting due to global warming. And like I said, glacial lake outburst floods occur when lakes formed by melting glaciers overflow, and this overflow of water, which is contained behind the glacial dam, and this abrupt flow of water causes a huge loss to life and infrastructure downstream. All of us are aware of the fact that the Himalayas are very sensitive to climate change, and these environments have very steep, unstable valley walls, and earthquakes are a very common event in the Himalayas. But because of the fact that the climate change is happening at a very rapid phase, these earthquakes have become more frequent, and it is also happening at a higher magnitude than it used to happen earlier, because like I said, the Himalayan region is very sensitive to the climate change. We shall now discuss what are the various ways to overcome the vulnerability. The first way is basically by depending on hydropower rather than on burning of fossil fuels, and it is particularly important in world's high altitude regions. And one such example is the case of Peru, wherein half of its electricity is generated from hydropower, and it continues to invest in such new infrastructure. Now, second thing is that scientists have developed a number of ways to monitor how landscapes are changing, particularly using satellite images, and therefore now we have enough tools to spot warnings as early as possible. And also we can now focus on hydropower projects as safely as we can. The third major way to overcome the vulnerability is that hydropower basically helps countries to reduce carbon emissions, but at the same time dams are becoming increasingly vulnerable as a consequence of the warming up of the climate, and because of as a result of these emissions. Now, what can we do? We can now develop this energy source safely. But how can we develop the energy source safely? We can develop this energy source safely by careful decision making, which is informed by research, and with continued monitoring of changing landscapes and the climate. Now, another major thing that we have to do in this direction is to identify potentially dangerous lakes. Like I said, scientists have developed various tools to spot the landscapes which pose, danger to the life around it. And potentially dangerous lakes can also, with the help of, field observations, record of past events, geomorphologic and geotechnical characteristics of the lake, dam and surroundings, and other physical conditions can be identified. Another way to overcome the vulnerability is the use of technology, wherein new methods and protocols can be developed to monitor lake bodies from space. Then also promoting the use of synthetic aperture radar imagery to detect the changes in water bodies, including new lake formations during the monsoon months, etc. Then another way is by channeling potential floods. How do you channel potential floods? To manage lakes structurally, the NDMA, which is the National Disaster Management Authority, recommends to reduce the volume of water. How do you reduce the volume of water? By breaching, by pumping out water, by making a tunnel through the moraine barrier or an under-ice dam. Then there should be something called the uniform codes for construction activity. So we have to develop a broad framework for the infrastructure development, excavation in vulnerable areas. And it is also necessary, it is also in fact mandatory that people accept the procedure for land use planning in the glacial lake outburst flood prone areas. And we also need to enhance our early warning systems, EWS. The number of implemented and operational glacial lake outburst flood early warning system is very small even at the global scale. So it is necessary that we enhance the early warning systems to avoid the potential loss that the glacial lake outburst floods can cause. So, what is the need of the hour? The need of the hour is to basically pause the hydropower projects in the Himalayas and as soon as possible commission a team which could assess the long-term impact of the construction work for hydropower development in these vulnerable areas, especially the Himalayas. So basically commission the assessment of the immediate or long-term implication of the construction work, especially in the vulnerable areas like Himalayas. Then there should also be an independent inquiry or audit of the social, environmental and safety norms. Basically, if during the construction period, if all these norms are met or not, there should be a social audit conducted for that. And citizens engagement and public consent mechanisms and also grievance redressal mechanisms should be put in place so that the grievances or issues brought forth by the public can be put in place post the clearance. We now move on to discuss the model question with respect to the topic that we have discussed so far. The model question for your practice is, what do you mean by glacial lake outburst flooding? In this context, discuss the vulnerabilities of hydropower projects in the Himalayan eco-sensitive region, which has far-reaching effect on the water resources of India, and suggest measures to overcome the same. I hope you found the content of this video useful. If you liked the content, kindly do not forget to like, comment, share and subscribe to our channel. Thank you.